Hello and welcome to the CEO Blindspots show, where leaders lead leaders. I'm your host, Birgit Kantz, and today's guest is Barry LaBov, who is the founder and CEO of LaBov and Beyond, a company that was actually established in 1981 and serves clients like Harley Davidson, Audi, Volkswagen. But most of you who are listening may know Barry as the author of the famous book, The Power of Differentiation. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to join you.
Yeah, well, you have quite an interesting background. I was looking for clues as to how you've succeeded so well. And I'm going, well, one clue is you must be applying the book to your own company to differentiate yourself. But the other clue is your leadership style, because I read, and I quote, that you've earned a place in the Entrepreneur of the Year Hall of Fame, and you've had several recognitions for building a best places to work company in Indiana. So those are some clues, but you were a rock star, you're an entrepreneur, you even worked at UPS. So you tell me, what do you think are some of the reasons you've succeeded?
I think one of the reasons I've succeeded is that I feel I need to constantly learn and grow and improve. So I feel I'm never done. I have to keep learning. I've learned a lot today, so I've got to keep learning. I've known too many really brilliant people that thought, hey, I'm really great. I think I've done it, and some of them are 20 years old. Some of them are 90 years old. And I'm going, I've got to keep growing and learning. And I think that also means you have to listen to people. You have to learn from people, and you have to humble yourself. So I have to constantly realize that, okay, I think we're doing good. This is great, but, I could do better. I could learn more. And I think I'm never done. And I think that will hopefully keep me alive longer and be a more valuable person to people in my life.
Yes. Well, it's funny you should say one of the things you slipped in there is that you also, know the importance of listening. And one of your references that I saw publicly stated, what a good listener you are. And would you say that's also part of why people trust you? Because I think you started your company after a client or someone that you knew bugged you to do the marketing for them.
Yes, that's true. I was doing what would be known as audio projects. So not marketing, but audio projects and recordings for a very large company. And they liked me, evidently. I don't know why, but they liked me. And they said, hey, we want to sell you. We want to outsource our marketing department to you. And I said, no. I'm not interested. I don't do that. But here are a bunch of other companies that could do that. And this went on and on and on. And a year later, they called me up and I went, oh my gosh, here they go again. And they said, we want to outsource our marketing to you. You will then become our ad agency. We'll give you 3 years worth of work. Wow. And I said, I've given you all these other names. Why do you keep coming back to me? And they said, because we trust you. And I went, oof. And I went, okay. So yeah, it was a year of listening to them, and then finally they persuaded me.
Yeah. Well, the show a lot of times talks about leadership blind spots, and people, one of the blind spots is they assume I mean the negative, but there's also positive ones. And it sounds like you had a positive blind spot of, part of why you succeed is because people trust you. So I'm curious, do you think that came from the way you were raised? Or I know your father passed away when you were still fairly young, but what would you say put you together that way, so to speak, to be able to be trustworthy and listen to others?
I think my father did bring me up pretty strictly. And, it was very obvious to me that I was accountable for everything I did, even at a young age. And, so for me, I've developed a resilience, let's say, a determination, so that when I start out and I'm not doing well and I'm failing at something, I just don't give up. I just keep going until I figure it out. And like we talked about, I want to learn from people because I'm impatient. So I don't want to keep making the same mistake for years and years and years. So how can I learn, and how can I be gracious and thank people, things like that. So that's what really happened to me. And I think it is interesting. I think when you mentioned that company that asked me to take on all that business, I listened to those people. These were really old guys. I was like 24 at the time. Boy, they had to be in their mid-30s. Man, they were old guys at that company. But I was so respectful to them, genuinely respectful. I didn't put on an air or anything. I thought, wow, they're really good guys. I mean, really old, but really good guys. And I think that kind of a humility where they're going, I think this person's listening. I think this person gets it. I'm not saying this person's perfect, but I trust him because I think he wants to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe they felt.
Well, and I have another clue about how you operate, because on your website it says basically which client is a good match and not a match, and it's about partnership, not perfection. So you clearly we all learn and grow together. So it sounds like that's another part of your success formula.
It is. And you mentioned rock music. In rock music, a lot of people don't understand this, but many songs that we all love were mistakes. They started out with somebody putting their finger in the wrong spot on a guitar or on a keyboard, and they went, ooh, what was that? And instead of going, okay, never do that again, they went, that was cool. That's interesting. And you learn that sometimes if you're really perfection bound, you can't get anything done. And it's far better to make progress than search for some sort of perfection, which of course doesn't exist.
Well, and since you brought it up, you start off as a rock star with your brother, if I remember correctly. And then, I think even Barry Manilow published one of your songs.
Barry Manilow published the song, so did Billy Joel, and so did Natalie Cole.
Oh, so then, of course, you went from music star to then learning how to help others. I don't know how you managed to also work with your brother. That's not easy to do, I hear, to work with family. You're currently, your wife is your partner, started the company with you. So
I think people are the strength. I worked early on with a guy who's super successful, and he used to tell me people are the big problem. It'd be a great world without people. Now, this guy has done great, okay, business-wise, but I was the opposite. I thought, no, people are the answer. People aren't the problem. So that's how I look at it. Now, there can be difficult people, of course, and I can be difficult, but I do think that we have to look at humans and say, they do bring something to the table. They do have a value.
Yeah, yeah. So you at an early age, you already ventured from rock star to the entrepreneur world. Is it because the situation with your father's death forced you to grow up quickly? I know you also, your work ethic is also amazing. I know that you worked at UPS in the mornings and then went to school and all that. So what do you think allowed you to grow up so fast?
Well, I was working at a recording studio and working at UPS at the same time. So I get up at 4 a.m. I would go to college for a few hours, and then I would work at the recording studio also. And then that studio got in trouble. They had no money. And so they said, hey, we can't pay you. And I said, hey, that's okay. I'll work a couple of months for nothing, being a kind of an idiot. I said, sure, I'll go do that. I said, the only thing I want you to do is pay the musicians. Okay, that's all I ask, because these are my friends, and I'm bringing them in, and they're doing some work here. And they said, no problem. So then one day, and this is the big moment of my life, one day, my wife and I, we were as poor as could be, living in a tiny little apartment. I got up that morning, and I said, I'm going to talk to the boss today because I think he's ripping off the musicians. He's not paying them, because a couple of them said that to me. And she said, well, what will you do? And I said, well, if he's really ripping them off, I'll have to quit. But I said, he probably won't admit that. And so I said, so I'll see you later tonight. I walk out, my landlord is walking right up to me. And I said, hey, how you doing, Bob? He just looked down, didn't say a word, walked by me. I thought, that's weird, because we were his favorite tenants, paid on time. He loved us. So I go in and I confront the boss and I go, hey, are you ripping off the musicians? And he said, yes, I am. I said, okay, thank you. I quit. He says, you can't quit because you will never amount to anything without me. You'll starve to death. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'd rather starve to death than work for somebody like you. And I said, and this is kind of funny, I've never said this on a podcast. I said, here's what I'll take. I'll take that microphone because it's a nice microphone, and that's what I'll take, and I won't give you any more trouble. That's the microphone I'm using right now as I'm talking to you on our podcast. And I went home. My wife was crying. I thought, oh my gosh, she heard that I quit my job. And I said, how are you doing? And she said, oh, it's been a terrible day. I said, okay. And she said, yeah, we're getting evicted because the landlord just got a divorce and his wife gets our apartment and she moves in 2 weeks, even though we've paid up. I said, oh, and she said, so in 2 weeks, we have no home. She said, how did your day go, honey?
Wow.
And I said, well, I have no job. So that's how we started our business. I said,
Wow.
okay, I'll start the business. And that's how we began. That was the day we began the business.
So then you were grateful that those other old guys, so to speak, in their 30s kept bugging you.
Yeah, I started to work with people like that company and others, and they were great to me.
Yeah.
They were really great.
And then I saw that in the meantime, you've exploded in growth. You've traveled all over the world. So, tell me a little bit about your leadership style in terms of during the, 4 years ago when everybody wanted to go to remote. How did you handle that?
Well, what happened during COVID with us was our governor said everybody can work from home except a few industries that are vital. Our attorney and our CPA firm said, hey, you don't have to let your people work from home. You can have them in because you work with some vital industries. And I said, no, we're going to figure a way to work from home as a team. So we gathered everybody together, and this was a very pivotal moment. A lot of my people were in tears and worried that they'd lose their jobs because a lot of companies were laying off. And one of our folks said, what are we going to do? I don't want to lose my job. And there were companies laying people off, cutting their hours, cutting their salaries, or doing all those things. It was a disaster. And so I said, okay, look, here's our goal. We're not going to lay anybody off. Nobody gets a salary reduction. We're going to work from home until the governor says we're allowed to come back. Even though we could fight that, we're not going to do it. So we're going to do that. And here's what we will also do. We are going to focus on growing our business and offering ideas and opportunities and new thoughts for our clients. And we're going to reach out to our clients every day and share ideas that could help them. And our goal is to grow. And within a week, we gained a brand new client. And during COVID, we grew and grew and grew. And that's what happened. We had many competitors that shut down, many that just gave up for 5 or 6 months, many that have scars to this day for the way that they behaved during those days of, really reducing headcount. And it was just terrible for people. So that's what we did. Today, we're back to work 4 days a week, and the 5th day we're working from home, and it works out very well for us.
Well, that's a gigantic clue as to why you succeeded and why people stay with you. And yeah, it sounds like you need to write another book on leadership through tough times. So on that note, I saw that you you learn from your mistakes, but I also saw that you joined organizations like YPO and now WHO. What would you say was the greatest influence on your ability to lead people effectively today?
Well, you mentioned YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and I'm certainly not young anymore, but when I joined, I was relatively young. That organization and others like it are really fantastic because you're with other people who in many cases are going through similar things or have gone through similar things or know people who went through similar things you're going through. And you start to find out that, you're not alone. You're going through these things and the person sitting next to you is going through the same kind of stuff. And you also find out that, wait a minute, you can help the person next to you because she or he is going through something you've gone through. So it's a really great opportunity. And here's a very fascinating thing I didn't expect. It's a great opportunity to learn about business, but it's every bit as big an opportunity to learn about personal life and how to get along with your spouse and how to treat your children and how to treat people because you're dealing with others that have gone through so many things. So YPO is the biggest business investment as far as organizations that I have, and it's been a really great one for me.
Yeah. And what made you want to join, or how did that come about?
I was asked to join by somebody, and I didn't know much about them, and it was great. And here's one thing they do that's very interesting. They have a thing called forum, and a forum is a small group of men and or women. So it could be 5 to 10 people, and it's a private group. And when you meet once a month, you can share things, and it's 100% confidential. And nobody knows about your spouses, don't know what you talk about. Nobody knows what you're talking about. And it gives you this safety of understanding that you can express yourself. So in those times, I can't express specifically, but I have been completely shocked at some of the things I've heard. And I've got, oh my gosh, it's been really great. So that's one of the positives of YPO. And like I said, organizations just like them.
Yes, very good. So, and you've probably were able to help them with their blind spot, because it sounds like a lot of companies have a blind spot about their marketing approach or their training approach, which is what you help them with. And, is there anything else you want to say about that to leaders who are currently listening?
Yeah, I think, and my book talks all about this, but it's very easy to not appreciate your differentiation and to take it for granted and to walk past it every day and to diminish it and to try to become a commodity over time. And what we try to do is say, wait a minute, whether you've been in business 1 year or 212 years, which we have both clients that have been in that realm, in that range, you have something that's unique. And what you have to do is identify it. Don't try to create a brand new differentiation today. Identify what you are and why what you do is unique. Then find a way to be able to express it so you can share that, right? And then share it with the most important people first, and that's your employees. They are the ones, that's what they need to know. That people need to feel a sense of significance and meaning in what they do. And if they just think they're doing stuff and nothing matters, then honestly, why should they care about doing a good job, let alone even staying on the job?
Yeah, that is probably the biggest blind spot, right? To market to your own people first.
Yeah, when I started this concept 20 years ago, I would sit down with CEOs. And I would say, okay, we're going to go do our brand reengineering, and it's 5 steps, and we're going to, do the interviews with employees and customers, and then we're going to go into your facility, and we're going to have our technical team look at everything, and then we're going to come back with our recommendations and put ideas together. And then the first thing you're going to do before you launch it to the world is you're going to celebrate it with your employees. Back then, 90% of the CEOs said, no, we're not doing that. We're paying them $5 an hour. They need to keep their head down and keep working. Today, when we say the exact same thing, the CEOs start to tear up when we talk about celebrating it with their people, and they go, look, that's the most important thing we need to do right now. We have low morale, we have low quality control. We need to have our people care, and that's so important. So today it's completely different, and it is embraced.
Well, that's good timing then for your company as well. Speaking of timing, I heard you say earlier one of your success factors is that you keep learning and you're humble and you listen. Well, I heard right now that marketing companies and training companies are being impacted or divided between the people who are learning AI and those who are not. Now, your success seems to be offline anyway. It's the differentiation factor of what they're already doing, but I'd be curious to get your feedback regarding that impact.
I think you have to embrace and utilize AI 100%. I think if you feel that it's going to go away, it's kind of like being way back, hundreds of years ago when the printing press came out and thinking, you know what? No, they're still going to need monks to have pens and to write on the script. I think it's the same thing. So we embrace it. We utilize it. We're ethical about it. We utilize it to generate ideas, and then we push it, and then we use our internal talents. So we use the technology and we use the talents to be able to come up with great ideas and recommendations. So we have to use it, and we're not lazy about it. I think that's one of the big dangers. People can get lazy, feed something in, there you go, there's your answer. You've got to make sure that you use your human touch, your intellect, your gut feeling to make sure that this is what I believe in and this is the right thing.
And you keep proving that with your success. So, so I have lots of clues now as to how you succeeded, but can you share a moment where you discovered your own blind spot as a leader?
Well, I've had a lot of blind spots. I think originally I realized I could not sell, so I had to go and ask for help. So I found somebody in my hometown who was supposedly a great salesperson, and I called him up and I said, I'd sure like to learn from you. And he said, what are you doing for lunch today? So, I learned that as a blind spot. I've learned as a blind spot that I cannot do things by myself. I need to have really great people around me who are not perfect, but who are understanding that they have a value and they have meaning and that I do personally care about them. So I've learned that, I can't be on my own. I can't be a solo performer and succeed.
Moments that you discovered that.
Well, the moments early on sales was when I couldn't sell anything. That was a pretty easy one. I think that at one point, 20 years ago, we were growing so fast that we had high turnover. And I thought, what is going on here? Because I thought we were doing really good things. But the problem was we weren't hiring the right people. Okay, so a blind spot we had was I thought, okay, we can bring a person in and we can shape and mold them into what we need. And I don't believe that anymore. I believe that they're coming in, this is who they are. And if they have the interest to do the things we're talking about, that's really great. If they don't, I cannot mold them. And that came from turnover and turnover. One of my problems has been that I can see the potential in people. I can see you can do this. And sometimes some people have been open enough to say to me, well, I appreciate that, but I don't want to do that, or I don't want to work that hard. Or I offered ownership to one person many years ago of our company. And I said, hey, you could become an owner. And the person said, I don't want to do it. I grew up in a household with an entrepreneurial dad, and I don't want to go through that. I said, but you would have been great. I don't want to go through that. So I've learned that I can't impose what I want on somebody. They are who they are. And I can appreciate them. And so that's from years of failing, in hiring and things like that. And that I have to focus on what that person does best and give them a role where they get to do that as much as possible.
Well, that was a great tip to share because I know a lot of leaders can relate to what you just said. Would you say it's also now in your hiring practices that you've made adjustments as well? Or is it, within the first 90 days? Or how do you discern now potential versus what they can actually do?
Hiring practices and listening to them and learning and observing, that's really critical. One thing I'll share, one thing that sounds really great about our company, but we've realized it's not for everybody. And that is we work with many different types of companies out there. And so we could work with a AAA baseball team. We could work with the world's greatest Scotch manufacturer. We could work with a great car company. We could work with the world's greatest motorcycle company. Okay. Well, that sounds great, except there are people who go, okay, that's crazy. I don't want to do that. I only want to work in automotive, or I only want to work in healthcare. And we go, well, we don't do that. And so we learn early on that if we hear that when we're interviewing, we don't say, okay, you're not going to be hired. We just say, this doesn't work. We want to tell you why. Another thing with us, and this sounds really great, but it is not for everybody, is we are so collaborative that it's almost insane. So we jam, like a music jam, we jam. And what that means is if you come up with an idea, you're going to hear people's opinions about it because they want to make it better. They're going to, you know what, you could also do this, you could do. And if you don't like that, if you want to be left alone, look, I want to do my thing and I want to be left alone, you would go crazy here. You couldn't stand it. And if you wanted to work with a client all by yourself and never let anyone else talk to that client because that client was yours, you couldn't work here because we have clients that get to meet a dozen of our people because they have different talents. So we've learned these things in the hiring process before somebody comes on.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm really glad you are clear about that, right? Because half of it is being clear what you're needing or wanting in a team members. So then can you also be really clear regarding marketing, right? So I heard that you've got this one really brilliant question that you encourage all leaders to ponder, in the marketing realm. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, I do. I do want to share that. Thank you. And it's very simple. And it's a double negative, which makes it kind of weird. But you ask people, whether it's your employees, your customers, suppliers, what is it that we should never change? What is it? And go and listen to what people say. What is it that we should never change? And you will start to hear things that will surprise you. And you'll go, what? Are you kidding me? I didn't know anybody cared about that. And they go, no, that's the best thing you do. Because one problem with entrepreneurs is we're very, very willing to change everything. Now, if you want to gain business, you can do ... Okay, I'll do it. Okay, that's what you have to ask. And I'll give one more bonus because you're such a great interviewer. Here's another one. If you still can't figure out what your differentiation is, here's a question. Is there anything that you do that takes extra steps or time or costs more than what your competition is doing? So does it take extra steps, extra time, or you have an ingredient, or you have a machinery, or you have a metallurgy that's involved that you wouldn't have to do if you were a competitor, but you're doing it? Is there something? And if you go, well, yeah, there's such and such, we do that. Okay, hold on. Why? And it's always down to, well, we think it makes our product better. We think it makes our bread taste better. And we do it ... Great. Do you charge for it? No. Do you share the story of it? No. That's where you start to go, wait a minute, maybe this is our differentiation.
Yeah, I love that you're sharing that because I read the story. I heard the story about you doing that with a bakery, I guess a national bakery. And they're like, yeah, we get our wheat from this other country and it's best. And they never even.
Yeah, I said, what do you call that grain? And they said, grain. That was it. I go, oh my gosh, you have this amazing thing and it's grain. Yeah. Instead of naming it, give it its own identity. You know, we don't name our kids child 1, 2, and 3. They have names. They have a meaning behind their names. Name your differentiator. Come on.
Yes, and that's why you're so good. It's obvious to you. So thank you, Gary, again, for taking the time to come on the show. I know you were traveling right before you appeared. And I know if people want to know more about you, they can go to LaBov.com.
It's LABOV, LABOV.com. You can go to my LinkedIn and you can go to Amazon regarding the book. Please leave an honest review because we have a lot of reviews going on. And if somebody wants to talk to me regarding any of this on LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect.
I'm glad you chose to appear.
Thank you very much.